She walked away in shame, her career destroyed, her name erased. But when a pilot used one impossible call sign, her call sign redemption didn't knock. It dragged her back into a war she never meant to fight again. Before we begin, hit subscribe and tell me what city you're watching from. Every new voice helps keep these American redemption stories alive. Welcome to the mission now, let's begin. The Alaskan sky looked as if it were made of lead as the sea to 7J tore through the low clouds, tossed around by blasts of cutting wind. Below, the mountains rose like black blades covered in snow, ready to swallow anything that fell onto them. Inside the aircraft, voices crackled across the radio in tight military jargon, blending with the constant hum of the engines. No one on board knew the flight carried more than tactical cargo and soldiers. It carried a secret that had already destroyed a career. And in a few minutes, that secret was going to explode again. The first crack sounded like internal thunder, a sharp, unnatural noise that made everyone glance at each other. A red warning light flashed wildly on the dashboard as the pilot cursed and yanked the controls. The aircraft dropped altitude abruptly, shaking bodies, tossing equipment, spreading fear through the cabin. Outside, the wind howled around the trembling fuselage, as if the mountain itself were pulling the plane downward. In the cargo bay, Lieutenant Emma Brooks slammed her shoulder against the wall to steady herself. She gripped the emergency radio with trembling fingers as the world tilted violently around her. Screams, murmured prayers, and metal groaning under strain filled the air. She saw a private slide across the floor, strike his head, and go limp. Through the chaos, one cold thought rose inside her. If this was sabotage, no one would believe her after this. The pilot fought to correct the angle, but the aircraft responded like a wounded animal. Alarms shrieked one after another, each beep echoing like a death sentence. Emma heard the hoarse voice of the co-pilot yelling something about power loss, systems shutting down in a cascade. The smell of smoke seeped into the cabin, burning eyes and throats. Someone shouted that the left wing was on fire. Emma knew waiting any longer meant dying without sending a word. She clutched the emergency radio like a last lifeline and began transmitting. Her voice came out rough, but steady, all training and instinct. She relayed approximate coordinates, aircraft type critical condition. The radio hissed, chopping her words apart. The pilot screamed instructions behind her, but the tearing wind swallowed almost everything. When the aircraft began losing control for good, gravity yanked Emma down so violently her head hit the ceiling and then the floor. Smoke thickened around her. Everything smelled of kerosene and burning metal. The world spun. The horizon disappeared. The sensation was unmistakable. Free fall. And then, between panic and vertigo, a calcine surfaced in Emma's mind like a reflex. One that made no sense to speak, but came loaded with urgency. She brought the radio close to her mouth, ignoring the blood dripping down her forehead. She swallowed fear, adjusted the frequency, and shouted the message that would change everything. A message meant for someone who wasn't on that plane. Raven 7, if you can hear me, we need you. Then again, louder, repeating, Raven 7, code red, disaster zone, multiple casualties, possible sabotage. The final syllables were swallowed by an explosion so violent it seemed to split the world in two. Impact came right after, brutal, ripping the radio from her hands. The C-7J slammed into the mountainside with the force of a divine punch. The sound was a mixture of explosion, tearing metal, and shattering rock. Parts of the fuselage flew apart like tin toys. Inside, bodies were thrown across the cabin, straps snapped. Screams vanished into silence. One side of the wreckage caught fire, painting the snow in streaks of orange and black. When everything finally stopped, only a distant hum remained, as if the world itself were underwater. Emma tried opening her eyes but saw only blurs and dancing lights. Blood filled her mouth. Every breath cut through her chest like a blade. Cold seeped through the torn fuselage, mixing with the heat of the flames. Still alive, she thought. For now, outside, the snow began falling again, slow and indifferent. The aircraft was now an open wound carved into the mountain, steaming, staining the white landscape with flashes of fire. And somewhere, floating, cross, Millery, freak, the call egg. Raven 7, a calcine no one was supposed to be using. A name that belonged to someone who had promised never to answer again. Miles away, in the frozen solitude of a wooden cabin, an old radio hissed on top of a table cluttered with tools. Outdated, modified, nearly obsolete. But for Amelia Harlow, it was the only link she still allowed herself to keep with the world that had once destroyed her life. She turned the tuning knob mechanically, just to distract from the silence. Static shifted into fragments of voices, coordinates, alerts, routine military chatter. Nothing she hadn't heard 1,000 times. Until one sentence cut through everything clear enough to freeze her hand mid-air. Raven 7, if you can hear this. We need you. For a moment Amelia thought she was hallucinating. Then the voice came again. And she knew, with her stomach twisting, the past had just found her. Amelia froze in place, hunched over the radio as if the device might bite her. The calcine echoed in her mind with the weight of an old, well-aimed punch. Raven 7, the identity she had buried along with her uniform, the medals boxed under her bed. And the career that had collapsed in a cold, impersonal military courtroom. Static reclaimed the frequency, but the damage was done. She snapped the radio off and stepped back, breathing too fast. The cabin felt smaller, the air heavier. The smell of old coffee and damp wood only added to the suffocating pressure. She clenched her hands into fists, trying to recall everything therapists had told her about grounding techniques. Deep breath. Count to 10, anchor yourself in the present. But how do you stay anchored when the past calls you by name? Outside the window lay a world of white and gray, snow-covered trees. A sky drained of color. A landscape that asked no questions. That's why I chose this place, she thought. Here, no one cared whether she had been negligent in duty or operationally dishonorable. To the mountain, she was just another living body. But running never meant forgetting. The memories struck hard and vivid. The courtroom, the silence so thick it felt weaponized. The judge reading the sentence. Faces she would never forget. Some colleagues staring with pity. Others with cold relief, as if glad the blame had landed somewhere else. And in the back, Colonel Kessler watching her like someone who already knew the outcome. The accusation had been clear. A failure in communications had cost lives. Logs showed Raven 7 failed to reroute a critical alert. The enemy attack caught the forward unit unprepared. 3 dead to wounded. And the report, irrefutable, pointing to her as the broken link. Amelia remembered watching her own execution without being able to scream. She knew she had rerouted the alert. She knew she had followed every protocol. But the logs shown in court were different. Packets missing, commands erased. Her voice, her correct transmission, gone. The defense argued possible tampering, but who would admit system failure? Blaming one person was easier. Especially someone whose career was rising too fast, who noticed too much, who had reported anomalies in Kessler's supply routes just weeks earlier. She could still feel the weight of Kessler's gaze. Not guilty, not conflicted, calculated. He knew exactly what he was doing. And no one would dig deep enough to uncover it. So Raven 7 became the official culprit. Convenient, disposable. After the dishonorable discharge, Amelia disappeared. Sold what she owned. Cut every tie. Moved to the most remote place she could find. Bought the cabin, the generator, the tools, the old radio. Ironically, the radio remained her one connection, at first out of habit, then out of vengeance. If anything ever sounded wrong, Maybe she could prevent another tragedy. She hadn't saved her team. Maybe she could save someone. But she never expected to hear her own ghost. Raven 7. That calcine should have been retired forever. If someone was using it now, it meant either someone who knew her story or someone trying to provoke her. Both dangerous. Amelia walked to the metal box under her bed and hesitated before opening it. When she did, the smell of stove and Ralphie's, her uniform, the raven patch. The medals that no longer meant anything. Under her budge cap, Amelia Ring 7 traced the patch with her fingers. It didn't burn, it just brought back every loss she tried to bury. Emma Brooks's voice echoed in her mind possible sabotage. Again, history repeating. The wind outside howled and shook the cabin. Amelia closed the box, but didn't put it away. She left it in the middle of the room, a truth she could no longer shove back under the bed. She turned the radio back on and searched for the signal. Nothing, only static. Anyone else would tell her, don't get involved. Protect yourself. You've suffered enough. But Amelia knew the truth. If there were survivors on that mountain, and if they had used her calcine, then someone still believed Raven 7 was alive, and whether she wanted to or not, that mattered again. Amelia spent the entire night turning the radio dial like someone trying to unlock an old mechanism by touch alone. Static, bursts of noise, electrical pops, but no fragment of the call returned. The silence felt insulting, like the universe had dropped the message on her lap and then vanished. Around 5 in the morning, she finally stepped away, exhausted, mind racing. The same phrase echoed beneath her skin. Raven 7, we need you. She put a pot of water on the stove, more out of habit than need, and leaned onto the table. Steam rose in soft curls, swirling through cracks in the wood. The gesture triggered a strange déjà vu. Nights on base monitoring communications until dawn, sipping terrible coffee while waiting for the next alert. Only now, she had no team, only wind knocking against the door. When the water boiled, she turned off the stove but didn't drink. She needed clarity. Aircraft don't broadcast random calcines. Someone knew her identity. Someone knew her story. Someone needed her. Or someone wanted her walking into danger. But the voice, it had been Emma's, undeniably. If Emma had managed to send that call in her final seconds of control, then something far bigger was happening. And Amelia couldn't ignore it. She opened the metal box again, faster this time. The uniform made her hesitate, but the tactical backpack didn't. She stuffed thermal clothing. Maps, a first aid kit, and a long-range flashlight inside. Then she reached for the small locked case, the pistol she hadn't fired in years, but maintained perfectly. Old habits don't die, they just sleep. Before leaving, she turned the radio back on one last time. Static teased her, almost mocking. She shut it off and slung the backpack over her shoulder. The door creaked open, unleashing a blast of freezing air that cut into her skin. The sky was storm-laden. A terrible time to travel. A perfect time for accidents. She walked to her old SUV. The engine coughed thick white smoke before starting. She entered GPS, coordinates manually. The route twisted through restricted access hordes. This wasn't a rescue. It was a battlefield. When she reached the perimeter fence of the military zone, she parked far away. Officially, she was a ghost. But if Kessler was involved, any misstep could start a hunt. She moved along the fence. Thin snow drifted like smoke. Silence hung unnaturally heavy. Bases were never this quiet. Engines, orders, chatter, all missing. Someone was already covering tracks. When she finally saw the soldiers, she noticed something chilling. No one spoke. No one searched for survivors. Everyone operated as if the crash had been resolved. That meant one thing: someone was erasing evidence. And if Amelia wanted the truth, she would need to reach the crash site before Kessler did. For the first time in years, she embraced the weight of her name. Raven 7 was back, whether she wanted it or not. Crossing the perimeter wasn't simple, but Amelia understood remote bases, as well as she understood her own breathing. Extreme weather installations relied on predictable patrols, minimal shifts, and blind spots created by snow accumulation. She observed the guards for several minutes, tracking their patterns. It didn't take long to identify a narrow gap between two towers partially covered by drifting snow. She crouched low, tightened the scarf around her face, and moved, each step precise and quiet. The wind roared around her, swallowing any sound she might have made. At the lowest point of the fence, she found a section weakened by corrosion. Pulling a multi-tool from her pocket, she cut through the wire carefully, creating a narrow gap just wide enough to slip through sideways. The metal creaked, but the wind's howl masked it completely. Inside the perimeter, the atmosphere felt wrong, the kind of silence only found in places where something terrible had just happened. Equipment was being positioned in a rush, but with no panic. Soldiers walked in tense lines. Vehicles were arranged in deliberate formations. No voices, no chatter, no urgency to find survivors. It was everyone already wasn't an accident. Keeping to the shadows behind the hangars, Amelia slipped into a dim corridor between two storage buildings, a space where the cameras had blind spots, known only to someone familiar with the system. There she found the first physical signs, scorched fuselage panels brought in by early teams. Some pieces still steamed in the cold. And what she saw made her stomach twist. Precise cut marks, linear signatures, not the aftermath of a mechanical failure, but deliberate tampering, sabotage, before she could examine further. Footsteps echoed down the corridor. She slipped behind stacked crates, holding her breath as the soldiers walked past. They sealed the main hangar. One whispered, "Nobody goes in." The colonel wants personal oversight. The other murmured nervously, "Kessler. Yeah, and this whole thing feels wrong." The name hit Amelia like ice water. Kessler was here, supervising, controlling, cleaning up. Just like he had done the day her life collapsed. Her pulse hammered. She waited until the soldiers moved out of earshot before sliding along the wall toward the administrative building on the base's far side. She couldn't enter the main corridors, too exposed, but a forgotten external staircase led to a technical floor. Snow had piled high across the steps, covering them from view. She climbed carefully. At the top, she forced open a rusty door with a thin blade. It clicked open with a reluctant snap. Inside, emergency red lights cast the corridor in an eerie glow. Server racks hummed softly. "Acha console scesi, prima ne report, precoce." The listed cause, unexpected primary communication failure. The same phrasing from her own trial. The same pattern. The same convenient excuse. Kessler wasn't just covering up sabotage. He was repeating the method. If she hadn't believed Emma before, she believed her now. She closed the file and exhaled shakily. If she wanted answers, she needed to reach the crash site before everything was scrubbed clean. Amelia slipped out of the technical room and descended the snow-covered stairs quietly. The wind pushed at her jacket as if urging her back, as if the mountain itself was warning her to turn around. But Amelia no longer backed away from ghosts. The truth was waiting on that mountain, and she would face it. The trail leading up the mountain felt more like a punishment than a path. Amelia pushed forward through deep snow, each step sinking as if the land itself were trying to hold her down. The wind lashed her face with sharp crystals that stung like needles. The terrain shifted between hidden ice and unstable rock, treacherous enough to break an ankle. Still, she climbed. Smoke smeared the sky above her, a thick, swirling plume rising from the crash site. The distant smell of burning kerosene carried across the cold air, igniting memories she wished she could forget. She reached a ridge overlooking the valley and stopped. The sight below was devastation. The sea, to Sector 7J lay torn into 3 massive sections, scattered across the snow like the remains of a giant carcass. One wing had vanished into the ground. The other burned in flickering bursts. Fire clung to twisted metal, defying the wind. Debris lay everywhere, some pieces still steaming. But Amelia noticed something else. These weren't random crash patterns. Panels had been cut, lines had been shaped. Explosive marks were directional. Someone had made sure this aircraft would fall. She descended carefully, boots crunching on ice. A low groan reached her through the wind. A voice, weak but alive. She slipped through a torn section of fuselage and found a soldier pinned beneath crushed seats and a metal bar. Blood soaked his uniform, but he was conscious. His eyes widened when he recognized her. "Captain, Raven," he whispered. "Stay still," she said, kneeling beside him. "I'm getting you out." Using a loose panel as leverage, she pried the metal upward. Muscles burned. Ice cracked beneath her boots. Finally, she freed his legs and dragged him clear. He gripped her wrist, desperate. They knew we were going down," he rasped. "They blocked comes everything." "Who did this?" Amelia asked. "He has harmed men. Before the impact." He passed ouchie. Amelia tightened his coat to preserve body heat and moved deeper into the wreckage. Then she found them. 2 silhouettes, huddled under a partially collapsed structure. One was the young soldier with a dislocated arm. The other, Emma, Amelia breathed. Emma Brooks lay pale and unconscious, a makeshift bandage stained deep red around her abdomen. Amelia checked her pulse, faint, but there. With quick improvisation, Amelia fashioned a stretcher and lifted Emma carefully. As she shifted the lieutenant, Emma's radio fell from her shoulder strap. Amelia picked it up. The display still showed the last transmission, the call using her call sign. Emma had trusted her until the very last moment. A heavy sound cracked the air behind her. Amelia froze. Not wind, not falling debris. Footsteps. Deliberate, slow, human. She turned, placing herself between the survivors and the sound. On a ridge above, 2 armed silhouettes watched her. No uniforms, no insignia, aggressive posture. One raised a weapon. Amelia fired a warning shot into the snow between them. The blast echoed across the valley. The silhouettes flinched, then vanished behind the trees. Not rescue, not chance. Someone wanted survivors dead. Someone wanted the truth buried. And Amelia realized that the moment she heard her call sign on the radio. She had stepped into a war she didn't start, but would damn well finish. Amelia hauled Emma to a sheltered spot higher on the slope, using tarps from the wreckage to form a makeshift lean-to. The young soldier helped despite the pain twisting her face. The temperature was dropping fast, the kind of cold that killed within hours. Amelia knelt beside Emma, checking her vitals. The head wound was deep but clotting. Her breath was shallow. Her skin felt like ice. While searching for additional injuries, Amelia found a small memory module in Emma's pocket, partially burned, but intact. Her breath hitched. This was no random piece of equipment. Pilots carried these only when they knew something was wrong. Emma had protected it. She opened its casing and saw markings, tiny precision scratches. The same tampering pattern she had seen inside the base hangar. Someone had sabotaged the aircraft before takeoff. The realization struck Amelia like a blow. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't failure. This was the same signature used to destroy her career. A faint groan pulled her attention. Emma blinked, ease unfocused. "Raven." She whispered, "I knew you'd come." "Don't talk," Amelia said softly, holding her hand. "Save your strength." Emma shook her head weakly. It wasn't a failure. Not an accident. Someone tampered with the panel before the flight. Amelia's pulse hammered. Who? Emma. Who touched the panel? Emma's gaze drifted unfocused. Her breathing hitched. But she managed one more warning. Don't trust the search team. There. Not from the base. A crack echoed through the forest. Then another branches snapping under weight. Amelia drew her pistol, body lowering into instinctive combat stance. Is it them again? The young soldier whispered. I don't know, Amelia answered, but we're not waiting to find out. She dragged fuselage pieces into position, creating a crude defensive line. The sounds grew louder, coordinated movement, boots crunching snow, metal clicking. They weren't searching, they were hunting. Amelia glanced at the wounded behind her, Emma barely conscious, the young soldier shaking with pain. She steadied her grip on her pistol. This wasn't just survival anymore. This was the moment she had feared for years, and the moment she had secretly prepared for. Because in the wreckage of a sabotaged aircraft, she finally had what she'd lost, proof she had never failed. She only had to live long enough to show it to the world. The wind roared through the trees, as if the mountain itself had stopped protecting Amelia and begun exposing her enemies. She held her pistol steady, breathing slowly, every muscle primed. The cold gnawed at her skin, but her mind remained razor-sharp, calculating angles, terrain, cover, and escape routes. The battlefield had never truly left her. It lived beneath her skin, a dormant instinct now fully awake. Snow settled over the wreckage in soft sheets, trying to erase the chaos of the crash, but nothing could hide the truth anymore, not from her. Amelia listened. Footsteps, snow shifting, breaths trying to stay quiet. The past wasn't just resurfacing. It was collapsing violently, irreversibly, right on top of her. The forest tightened around them, full of clawing branches and twisting shadows. The wind hurled snow in swirling sheets that distorted visibility, a blessing and a curse. If the attackers couldn't see clearly, neither could she. But Amelia knew the terrain worked in her favor. Predators relied on visibility. Survivors relied on instinct. The young soldier limped behind her, teeth clenched against the pain of her dislocated shoulder. Amelia dragged Emma on the makeshift stretcher, her breath fogging violently in the cold. Every step was a fight. Behind them, footsteps crunched steadily, not rushed, not careless. Tracking steps, measured, experienced. They weren't looking, they were following. When Amelia reached an open patch, a wide expanse of thin snow reflecting pale sky, she stopped abruptly. This ground was deadly. No cover, no shadows. No protection cross it, and they perfects. She scanned the surroundings fast. Steep incline to the left, impossible with wounded. Thick pines to the right, too narrow for a stretcher. Open snow ahead, suicide. But then she saw it. A fallen trunk buried under snow, hollow beneath the roots, enough space to hide to people. And a natural dip in the ground nearby, perfect for a quick ambush. She turned to the injured soldier. "You two crawl under that trunk and don't move," Amelia ordered. "I'll draw them away." "And you?" the soldier asked, fear trembling through her voice. "I'll take care of the rest," Amelia said. "But I will come back." Once Emma and the soldier were hidden and covered in snow and branches, Amelia moved toward the dip in the terrain. The wind hissed, warning her, but she ignored it. She crouched low behind the rise, gun ready. The footsteps grew louder, closer, more deliberate. 3 men, maybe 4. One silhouette appeared between the trees. Amelia fired. The man fell with a strangled cry, rolling across the snow. The second attacker shot back immediately. Bark exploded from a tree beside her face. Ice shattered and sprayed. Amelia ducked, inhaled sharply, then rose and fired into quickshots. One struck the man's thigh, sending him stumbling. The third flanked her right side. Amelia spotted him reflected in a shard of ice on the ground. She pivoted, firing cleanly. He dropped. Gunshots echoed through the forest like cracking bones. A fourth man returned fire, accurate, fast. Bullets tore through the snow inches from her knees. Amelia slid behind a boulder, breath ragged but focused. She fired again, forcing him into cover. But she could hear something different now. Footsteps retreating, running. They were pulling back. Not because she'd scared them, but because someone else had given the order. When Amelia returned to the hidden trunk, she found the soldier trembling, Emma unconscious but still breathing. "They're gone," the soldier whispered. "For now," Amelia said, "but they'll reorganize." Emma stirred weakly. Her fingers twitched. She whispered something. "Raven, module." "Don't let them." "Take it." "I won't," Amelia whispered. And she wouldn't. Because whoever these men were, they weren't rescuers. They were cleaners, sent to erase survivors. And Amelia had just made herself their primary obstacle. They moved deeper into the forest, Amelia dragging Emma's stretcher with relentless determination. The snow had softened into a heavy hush, a dangerous silence that amplified every breath, every broken twig. When they reached a clearing sheltered by jagged rocks, Amelia signaled to stop. She needed to reassess the terrain and check the wounded. But the moment she knelt beside Emma, a branch snapped behind them, a deliberate step. Amelia spun, gun raised, instantly, perfectly. A man stepped out from between two trees. Hands raised brawled. Uniform worn from hours in the field. His insignia read, "Investigator Cole Maddox, lower the gun." "Raven," he said calmly. "You don't have permission to use that name," she answered coldly. "You're right," he said. "But if I were here to arrest you, you wouldn't have heard me coming." Amelia hesitated. He had approached loudly, intentionally. She kept her gun, she demanded. Maddox pulled a military tablet from inside his coat and dropped it near her feet. "I want answers," he said. "The same ones you're chasing." Amelia grabbed the tablet without taking her eyes off him. On the screen were internal crash files, redacted documents, conflicting timestamps, duplicate signatures. The only way someone could access this data was from inside the investigation. "You're part of the inquiry team?" Amelia asked. "I was," Maddox answered. "Until I asked the wrong questions. Prove you're not with Kessler." "If I wanted to turn you in," Maddox said, "I'd call in a squad right now. He has men everywhere on this mountain." That was true, painfully true. "And why follow me?" she asked. "Because," he said, stepping closer, "I found something." He pulled a sealed folder from his coat. "The original report from your mission. The one that went missing during your trial." Amelia felt the world tilt. "How?" "It was hidden on a parallel server Kessler shouldn't have access to," Maddox said. "I found it while pulling logs from this crash." He knelt beside Emma and checked her pulse gently before looking up at Amelia. "You trends me, Eller," he leered softly. "You followed protocol. The logs were altered after the mission." "You were never at fault." Amelia's breath caught. "The courtroom, the accusations, the shame, the exile, all built on lies." "Why tell me?" she whispered. "Because now Kessler wants me dead too," Maddox said. For the first time in years, she felt the faintest stir of trust, fragile, hesitant, but real. "If you're lying," she warned, lowering her gun slowly, "I will shoot you." "Fair," he said. Amelia inhaled deeply. For the first time since hearing her calcine crackle through the radio, she wasn't alone. The trek through the forest grew, heavier by the minute. Maddox led the way, navigating with an offline military map, tracing paths that avoided open snowfields and likely ambush zones. Amelia followed close, carrying Emma on the improvised stretcher. The young soldier limped behind, every breath tight with pain. The snowfall lightened just enough to reveal the terrain, quiet to quiet. Snow softened every sound, making the world feel hollow, as if holding its breath. When Maddox finally stopped beside a massive boulder coated in ice, he tapped the GPS screen. This is it. Amelia frowned. This is what? He pointed to a narrow opening behind the rock, a hidden cave. Patrol units use it during storms. It won't appear on any civilian map. They ducked into the entrance. Inside, the space widened into a dry cavern lit only by faint daylight slipping through the cracks. Maddox activated a chemical heater, casting an orange glow across frozen stone. Amelia set Emma down gently, her body shaking from exhaustion and adrenaline. Maddox crouched beside them. "Show me the module." Amelia handed it over reluctantly. Maddox turned it in his hands, his brow furrowing at the burn marks and warped metal. They tried to wipe it, he murmured, but something interrupted the process. He opened the casing with a small tool from his pack. Inside, delicate circuitry flickered with weak life, not dead, not alive, but salvageable. "I can recover this," Maddox said, "but we need power." "And time? Do we have either?" Amelia asked. His silence was the answer. Still, he connected the module to a compact investigative device, the kind assigned only to high-ranking investigators. A faint holographic screen flickered to life. Lines of corrupted code scrolled past, then partial logs, then timestamps, then data blocks, then patterns. Amelia felt her pulse spike. "The same digital signature," she whispered. "From my mission." Maddox nodded grimly. "Exactly the same. The same alterations. The same gaps. The same sequence." Then something unexpected happened. A hidden file appeared, encrypted, locked behind military-level access. Maddox's eyes widened as it began to auto-decrypt. "You'd open this," Amelia asked his head. It unlocked itself when the device recognized the module. Someone embedded an emergency access trigger. A list of internal reports displayed across the hologram. Then appeared confidential supply route interference program directive authorization. Cole, Richard Kessler, run code. Maddox scrolled further. The report detailed diverted aircraft components, falsified maintenance logs, planned communication failures, deliberate sabotage, concealed black ops movements. Framed personnel erased alerts, falsified blame and names, dozens of them including flight crew members listed as collateral. Every line cut deeper than the last. Kessler hadn't just destroyed one mission. He had orchestrated years of systematic cover-ups. Amelia stared at the screen, jaw tight, heart pounding like a drum against her ribs. "This," Maddox whispered, voice trembling in anger, "is enough to bury him for life." "No," Amelia said quietly, "it's enough to bury everyone involved." Before Maddox could reply, a sound echoed from the entrance of the cave, a soft grunge. Snow-shifting boots. Maddox and Amelia turned at the same time, weapons raised. A cold, male voice cut through the air. "Hand over the module, and maybe you'll die quickly." They had been found. And Kessler's men were closing in. The man at the cave mouth held his weapon with the calm precision of someone who had performed this exact kill dozens of times. The heater's orange glow lit the metal of his rifle and the murderous intent in his eyes. Two more shadows shifted behind him, enough to overwhelm a small team, but not enough to storm a bottlenecked cave. It didn't matter. They didn't plan to storm it. They planned to collapse it. Maddox moved instinctively, pushing Emma's stretcher behind a rock formation. Amelia fired first, her shot striking the lead attacker in the shoulder. He stumbled back with a grunt. Chaos exploded. Gunfire erupted, ricocheting off stone walls, sending showers of sparks through the cave. Maddox dragged the injured soldier behind cover as bullets tore through the air. One attacker pushed forward, Amelia hit him in the thigh. He dropped. Another tried to flank. Maddox's return fire forced him back. But they weren't retreating. They were repositioning. Outside, metallic clunks echoed, sounds Amelia recognized instantly. Chains. Tension. A heavy engine being maneuvered. Her stomach dropped. They brought a vehicle. Maddox whispered. And they're angling it toward the entrance. Amelia's eyes widened. They're going to bury us. A hum built outside. The sound of a vehicle reversing, repositioning, preparing. Then the explosion. The blast tore through the cave entrance. Rocks fractured. Snow and debris cascaded inward. The entire mountain seemed to groan. The entrance buckled. They had minutes, maybe less. We move now. Amelia ordered. Maddox grabbed the wounded soldier. Amelia lifted Emma. Snow filled the cave like an avalanche. They rushed toward the back passages, the cave collapsing behind them. If there wasn't another exit, they would die buried under tons of ice and stone. The narrow passage twisted like the backbone of some ancient creature. Amelia forced herself forward, every muscle screaming as Emma's weight dragged at her arms. Maddox stumbled behind them, half guiding the injured soldier, half pulling her. Behind them, the cave roared, stone grinding, ice splitting, echoes like thunder. They were outrunning death itself. A final turn led them to a slit of pale light squeezed between two massive boulders. The exit. Maddox shouted. Amelia squeezed through first, pulling Emma with her. The cold outside hit her like a slap, but she didn't stop until everyone was out. Seconds later, the cave behind them collapsed completely in a deafening roar. Snow and dust blew outward. Birds scattered from the trees. Silence returned, cold, heavy, final. Amelia breathed hard, her side burning with every inhale. The forest here felt different, sharper, darker, the wind carrying something ominous. Because they weren't alone. Fresh footprints lined the ridge above them, Amelia fro. Those weren't from their pursuers. These were heavier, deeper, strategic, snow-crunched. A silhouette appeared at the top of the ridge, tall, composed, uniform immaculate. Colonel Richard Kessler. He looked down at them like a king passing judgment. Raven 7, he called, voice smooth and venomous. You should have stayed dead. Maddox stepped forward, fury twisting his features. She never failed. You sabotaged the mission. You killed those people. Kessler raised his pistol. A single shot rang out. Maddox dropped to one knee, clutching his shoulder. Kessler smirked. Truth is whatever I decide it is. And you, his gun shifted toward Amelia, you should have accepted your disgrace gracefully. Amelia braced herself. Emma stirred weakly. The young soldier gasped. Armed men appeared on both sides of the ravine. They were surrounded. But Amelia still had one advantage, the module and the transmitter at her hip. Not enough to call for backup, but enough to send something. She typed a code she swore she'd never use again. Our AVEN7 read code Phoenix Protocol. The transmitter beeped. A low hum radiated across the snow. Kessler's eyes widened. What did you do? Amelia stared back, fearless. I gave the truth a place to land. The snowstorm blurred the world into shifting white sheets, but there was no mistaking the figure standing atop the ridge. Colonel Richard Kessler looked down at them with the unearned arrogance of a man who believed consequences were for other people. Raven 7, he said, voice amplified by the wind, you never learned when to stay broken. Amelia slid one foot back for stability, Emma's stretcher at her side, the wounded soldier cowering behind a fallen log. Maddox leaned heavily against a boulder, blood soaking through his bandage. You framed her. Maddox shouted, forcing strength into his voice. She saved lives. You destroyed them, Kessler fired. The bullet slammed into Maddox's arm, and he crumpled with a grimace of pain. Amelia stepped between them, gun raised. Enough. Kessler smirked. You always had spirit, Harlow. Shame it was wasted. His men appeared along the ridge, armed silhouettes in a tightening arc. Not rescuers, not investigators. Executioners. Kessler's voice dripped like oil. Hand over the module, Amelia. Do that, and I might let the others die quickly. Amelia glanced at Emma, barely conscious. At Maddox, losing strength by the second. At the young soldier, shaking but refusing to back down. And then at the transmitter in her hand. No turning back. Her thumb pressed harder against the screen. Finishing the override code, Phoenix Protocol active the device beeped. A soft, rising hum rippled through the air, a signal injection forcing nearby towers to accept priority data. It had begun sending everything. Kessler recognized it instantly. His expression twisted into pure, murderous rage. Amelia. He lunged down the ridge, slipping on snow, desperation tearing through every movement. He fired, missing her head by inches. She rolled behind a boulder, clutching the transmitter to her chest as the file transfer accelerated across all military frequencies. Evidence, logs, orders, his crimes, everything broadcast irreversible, a gunshot cracked, sudden, violent. Pain exploded across her ribs as a bullet grazed her side. She dropped to her knees, but didn't let go of the transmitter. The data stream per 79%, 85%. Kessler charged, slipping and snarling as he closed the distance. His voice broke into a roar. I own the truth. I decide who lives, who dies. Amelia raised her gun, shaking, bleeding, relentless, and fired. He stumbled but kept coming. 88%. 92%, 95%, knocking her backward. The transmitter skidded across the snow. He pressed his knee into her chest, gripping her throat with both hands. You should have stayed erased, he hissed. Amelia gasped, clawing his vision blurring. Maddox staggered forward, barely conscious, lifting a rock with everything he had left. Maddox stoned. Amelia choked. He didn't listen. He slammed the rock into Kessler's skull. The colonel collapsed sideways, dazed. Amelia rolled to her stomach, dragging herself across the snow toward the transmitter. Her blood left streaks behind her. 98%, 99%. Transmission COM pelotons transmitter, trash piercing, undeniable. Every radio in the area crackled alive. Every soldier on the ridge reached for their earpieces. Every device within range lit up with the same broadcast. Kessler's forged logs, his sabotage instructions, his parallel server, his trap, his crimes, inescapable, undeniable, public. Kessler pushed himself conscious. Swizzwire, no, for his gun. Dozens of searchlights cut through the storm. The sound of helicopters thundered across the ravine. Ropes dropped. Soldiers rappelled down, weapons drawn. This time, not for her. One voice boomed, Colonel Richard Kessler. Drop your weapon and surrender immediately. Kessler stared at Amelia, hate twisting his features, then slowly raised his hands. His empire died in the snow. Amelia collapsed into Maddox's arms as the cold swallowed her vision. And finally, for the first time in years, she felt free. The world dissolved into sterile white. Beeping monitors, heated blankets, for lines. A faint antiseptic smell. Amelia's eyelids lifted slowly, heavy as stone. She was alive. Hospital room military, advanced, quiet, safe. The door opened. Cole Maddox entered, arm in a sling, limping but smiling. Good morning, Raven, he said softly. Glad you're still with us. How long? She croaked. 3 days, he replied. You scared the hell out of everyone. She tried to sit up, failed, winced. Easy, he said. You took a bullet. saved survivors, fought an armed squad, and toppled a colonel. You're entitled to rest. Amelia exhaled shakily. The others, alive, recovering, thanks to you, before she figured. General Marlene Ayes' sharp uniform. Eyes like steel, presence like iron. She stopped at Amelia's bedside. Captain Harlow. The title alone almost broke Amelia. Ma'am, she whispered. The general placed a folder on the bed. I could you come de Shilindi. But instead, I'm giving you this. Inside the folder, a reinstatement, a new badge, updated credentials, and one more thing. Raven 7 Special Operations, Consultant Strategic Communications Division. Amelia's breath caught. Is this real? It is, the general said. Your name has been cleared. Completely. Officially. Permanently. Emotion surged, so suddenly it nearly overwhelmed her. Maddox grinned. You're back, Raven, this time on your terms. Amelia stared at the badge. Her name, untarnished, restored. For years it had been a weight of shame. Now it was a symbol of everything she had survived. Everything she had fought for. Everything she had reclaimed. She looked up at the general. I accept. Days passed. Recovery was slow but steady. Emma regained consciousness. The wounded soldier survived surgery. Maddox healed enough to walk without collapsing. Then came the press conference. The tribunal hearings. The official reports. Kessler faced a storm no one could save him from. Dozens of charges. Multiple witnesses. Digital evidence that couldn't be erased. A legacy in flames. Amelia watched quietly from a back room, her new badge cool in her hand. When the proceedings ended, she stood alone for a moment, breathing deeply, letting the weight of her past finally lift. She expected to feel emptiness. Instead, she felt purpose. The general found her later that afternoon. Things are changing, Captain, Hayes said. Corruption spreads only when good people stay silent. We need more good people. She handed Amelia a secure envelope. A new assignment, voluntary, high priority. And it needs someone who knows how to fight from the shadows. Amelia opened it. Inside, her new orders bore a single line. Operation Phoenix Reconstruction and Oversight Lead. Captain Amelia, Harlow Raven 7. She swallowed hard. A new mission? She asked quietly. The general nodded. A new beginning. Maddox joined them at the doorway. So, he asked, "Are you going?" Amelia looked down at the badge in her hand. Then at the orders. Then at the future opening in front of her. She straightened her shoulders. "Yes," she said, "I'm going." The general extended her hand. "Welcome back, Raven 7. Amelia shook it firmly. For years, she had run from her past. Now, she walked straight into her destiny. Raven 7 had returned, not destroyed, not disgraced, but reborn. If this story moved you, then you belong here. At Redemption of America, every story carries a truth. Broken doesn't mean finished, and shame is not the end. So, make sure you subscribe, leave your comment about the moment that hit you hardest, and share this video with someone who needs to remember what redemption looks like. Until next time, stay strong, stay honorable, and never forget, America redeems its own.